Chapter 2, Sadhana Pada, begins with a radical shift. Having described the heights of Samadhi for the spiritually advanced in Chapter 1, Patanjali now descends into the trenches of human struggle. He defines Kriya Yoga, the yoga of action. It consists of tapas, burning discipline, swadhyay, relentless self-study, and Ishvara Pranidhana, total surrender to the Supreme. Sage Vyas states this is specifically for the restless mind. In daily life, when you are paralyzed by anxiety or trauma, you cannot simply sit and meditate. The mind is too violently agitated. You must first use fierce physical discipline and psychological action to burn through the biological inertia of tamas before profound stillness becomes mathematically possible. Why do we practice Kriya Yoga? Patanjali gives a strictly dual psychological purpose: to cultivate the fertile ground for samadhi and to radically attenuate or thin out the kleshas. The kleshas are the deep, toxic, psychological afflictions that plague human consciousness. Hariharananda Aranya notes that before you can completely destroy an enemy, you must weaken it. You cannot obliterate deep-seated trauma overnight. Kriya Yoga acts as psychological chemotherapy. It starves the toxic tumors of the ego, rendering them so thin and fragile that the later practice of deep, laser-focused meditation can easily incinerate them. Patanjali now names the exact anatomy of human suffering. There are 5 kleshas, or afflictions: avidya, which is ignorance; asmita, egoism; raga, attachment; dvesha, aversion; and abhinivesha, the clinging to physical life. Every single neurosis, panic attack, and act of human cruelty traces its absolute root back to one of these 5 afflictions. They form a biological and psychological tree of suffering. Ignorance is the hidden root system, while ego, attachment, aversion, and fear are the visible, toxic branches that violently ensnare the seer in the material world. Ignorance, avidya, is the breeding ground for the other 4 afflictions, regardless of whether they exist in 4 specific states: dormant, attenuated, intercepted, or fully active. This sutra maps the life cycle of trauma. A klesha can be dormant, like a sleeping seed of addiction waiting for the right trigger. It can be attenuated or weakened by yogic practice. It can be intercepted, where a sudden burst of anger overpowers sadness. Or it can be fully active, possessing your nervous system completely. Yet, beneath all 4 states, the fundamental soil keeping them alive is always ignorance. What exactly is this fundamental ignorance? Patanjali defines avidya objectively: it is taking the non-eternal for the eternal, the impure for the pure, the painful as pleasurable, and the non-self as the true self. This is the ultimate cognitive dissonance. In daily life, this is staying in a highly toxic, deteriorating relationship, hallucinating that it is pure and everlasting. It is chasing money or status, which invariably cause stress and decay, while hallucinating that they will bring permanent, radiant joy. Ignorance is not a lack of academic data, it is a structural hallucination that violently misinterprets the very physics of reality. From ignorance breeds asmita, the ego. Egoism is the identification, as it were, of the power of the seer with the power of the instrument of seeing. Vyas provides a brilliant explanation: the pure soul is the seer, and the intellect is merely the instrument, like a pair of glasses. Asmita occurs when the eye fuses with the glasses and forgets it is the eye. When your intellect is criticized at work, the pure soul feels a mortal threat, because the consciousness has completely, tragically collapsed its infinite identity into a fragile, biological brain. From the ego sprouts raga, or attachment. Attachment is that psychological force which perpetually dwells upon pleasure. This sutra predicts the modern neuroscience of dopamine loops. Once the ego experiences a pleasure, be it sugar, validation, or a digital notification, it generates a subtle memory impression. Raga is the frantic, hungry ghost that continuously chases the repetition of that exact impression. The yogi recognizes that this addictive pursuit is an unwinnable rat race. The object of pleasure degrades, but the craving exponentially multiplies, guaranteeing misery. The dark twin of attachment is dvesha. Aversion is that psychological force which dwells upon pain. Just as raga pulls, dvesha violently pushes. It is the chronic, obsessive avoidance of past trauma. In daily life, dvesha manifests as chronic anxiety, hatred, and prejudice. By desperately trying to avoid a specific psychological pain, the mind builds an invisible, suffocating cage around itself. The very energy expended in resisting the pain solidifies the trauma, allowing the affliction to secretly dictate the boundaries of your entire life. The final affliction is the most deeply rooted, abhinivesha. Clinging to biological life, flowing by its own self-sustaining potency, is established even in the profoundly wise. This is the sheer terror of death. Patanjali notes, Swarsavahi, it flows automatically. Even a highly educated scholar who theoretically understands that the soul is immortal will still instinctively flinch and experience biological panic if a snake strikes at them. Abhinivesha is the primal, cellular programming of the nervous system, proving that intellectual understanding is utterly useless against deep karmic afflictions. True eradication requires profound yogic intervention. How do we destroy these deep, evolutionary afflictions? Sutra 2.10 gives the master key. These subtle afflictions are to be destroyed by resolving them back into their original state. The process is called pratiprasva, which means involution or reverse engineering. You cannot kill an active, ragging trauma. You must use Kriya Yoga to thin it out, tracing the branch of fear back to the branch of ego, and tracing ego back to the root soil of ignorance. Through the blazing light of profound meditation, the yogi burns the soil of ignorance entirely. Without soil, the entire tree of suffering instantaneously collapses, liberating the consciousness forever. Once the deep psychological afflictions are thinned out by active discipline, their remaining mental fluctuations are completely destroyed by meditation. Sage Vyas explains that gross impurities are washed away by physical action, but the subtle, microscopic dust of the ego can only be incinerated by the laser-like focus of dhyana. In daily life, you cannot simply meditate away a ragging panic attack. You must first use physical action to ground yourself. Only when the mind is successfully thinned of its chaotic energy can deep meditation step in to surgically remove the final, lingering anxiety. The massive reservoir of our human karma is deeply rooted in these exact afflictions, bringing experiences that must be felt in the seen present or the unseen future. Hariharananda Aranya notes that every single action driven by fear or ego deposits a latent seed in the subconscious vault. In modern psychology, this is the exact mechanism of intergenerational trauma and subconscious behavioral loops. When we react from a place of unhealed pain, we actively load our psychological hard drive with explosive triggers that will inevitably detonate in our future. As long as this toxic root exists, it will relentlessly bear the fruits of human existence, dictating the type of birth, the lifespan, and the specific experiences we endure. If the soil of your mind is soaked in the poison of ignorance and ego, every relationship, career, and daily interaction that grows from it will bear the exact same bitter fruit. You cannot plant a seed of toxic attachment and expect to harvest a life of absolute peace. The underlying psychological root dictates the external fruit with absolute, mathematical precision. These experiences bear the fruits of either fleeting joy or agonizing sorrow, directly correlating to the virtue or toxicity of their underlying causes. However, traditional commentators strongly warn against settling for temporary joy. Even when we experience intense pleasure from a career success or a new relationship, that joy is inherently unstable. Because it relies on external, deteriorating factors, the human ego is immediately gripped by the terrifying anxiety of losing it, instantly transforming our greatest success into the seed of our future suffering. This brings Patanjali to his most sobering and profound declaration: to the highly discriminating mind, absolutely everything is suffering. This is due to the agony of constant change, the terrifying anxiety of losing what we love, the compounding weight of past traumatic impressions, and the violent, perpetual clashing of the fundamental forces of nature. To the awakened yogi, worldly happiness is an illusion. The highest earthly pleasure is merely a temporary pause between pains. Realizing this undeniable, objective truth is the catalyst that forces the soul to seek true, eternal liberation. But Patanjali does not leave us in despair. He immediately delivers the ultimate promise of yoga: the pain that has not yet come can and must be entirely avoided. Past pain is already dead. Present pain is currently burning itself out. Only future suffering remains under your absolute control. By rewiring your nervous system today, you definitively cut off the fuel supply to tomorrow's trauma. The entire technology of yoga is designed to proactively incinerate these psychological seeds before they ever have the chance to sprout. To avoid this future pain, we must isolate its absolute cause. The root of all avoidable suffering is the false, tragic union of the pure seer with the mechanical things that are seen. Sage Vyas explains this using the metaphor of a magnet and iron. The pure soul becomes utterly mesmerized by the flashing lights of the mind and body, magnetically locking onto them. We suffer deeply because the immortal, untouchable consciousness tragically hallucinates that it is the fragile, aging, and vulnerable biological body. What exactly is the seen world? It is characterized by illumination, frantic action, and heavy inertia. It consists of the gross physical elements and the delicate biological senses, serving only to ultimate purposes, worldly experience, and eventual liberation. The physical universe is not an enemy to be hated. It is a cosmic, evolutionary gymnasium. Nature deliberately provides endless layers of sensory experience designed to completely exhaust the ego's desires. Once the soul is thoroughly exhausted by the pain of material existence, the universe gracefully provides the tools for its profound awakening and freedom. The fundamental energies constructing this universe operate through four distinct stages: the specific physical reality, the non-specific subtle energies, the defined cosmic blueprint, and the totally undefinable, unmanifest void. This proves that our solid daily reality is merely the tip of a massive, subtle iceberg. When you feel an emotion, it actually begins in the undefinable void, trickles down into a subtle energetic frequency, and finally crashes violently into your physical nervous system. The highly trained yogi learns to intercept suffering at its unmanifest level, long before it ever becomes a physical reality. Finally, Patanjali defines the true nature of the seer. The seer is absolute, pure awareness. Though fundamentally pure and totally unblemished, it witnesses reality through the dense, colored filter of the human intellect. You are the pristine, boundless sky. Your thoughts are merely the passing weather. The sky is never damaged, threatened, or changed by a thunderstorm, but the fragile human intellect constantly convinces the soul that it is the storm. Recognizing that you are the untouched, silent witness is the definitive dawn of true psychological freedom. The entire physical universe, with all its chaotic beauty and agonizing pain, exists for one singular purpose, the liberation of the seer. Sage Vyas explains that material nature is not a random, hostile trap, it is a meticulously designed evolutionary classroom. Every heartbreak, every failure, and every joy is manufactured strictly to generate the psychological friction required to awaken your immortal consciousness. When you face a crushing defeat in daily life, this sutra completely reframes your reality. The universe is not punishing you. It is actively serving you, breaking the ego so the true self can finally recognize its own infinite nature. When a yogi attains ultimate enlightenment, the physical universe effectively ceases to exist for them as a binding force. Yet, the world continues to spin endlessly for everyone else. This sutra reveals a stunning psychological truth: reality is not an objective monolith, it is highly customized. Your personal reality is generated directly by your specific, unresolved trauma and ignorance. When your inner blindness dissolves, your personal karmic matrix instantly collapses. You become completely free from the gravitational pull of fear and desire, even while the rest of humanity remains deeply asleep, continuously entangled in the exact same physical world. Why did pure, liberated consciousness ever enter the messy, painful physical body? Patanjali explains that the tragic union of the seer and the seen exists solely so the consciousness can discover its own inherent power. Hariharananda Aranya compares this to an amnesiac king pretending to be a beggar in his own kingdom. The pure soul magnetically fuses with the biological intellect in order to taste material life. However, it tragically forgets its royal, immortal identity. It becomes completely hypnotized by the relentless sensory drama of human survival, falsely believing it is a fragile, dying machine that must desperately fight for approval and pleasure. The absolute root cause of this tragic, hypnotic fusion is avidya, ignorance. This is not a lack of academic data. Avidya is a profound, structural cognitive hallucination. You look in the mirror every morning and genuinely believe you are the aging biological tissue and the accumulated memories of your past, completely missing the eternal, observing awareness looking out from behind the eyes. This single, devastating mistaken identity is the absolute foundation of all human anxiety, grief, and psychological suffering. By systematically destroying this root ignorance, the false magnetic union between the soul and the biological machine is permanently severed. This state is called kaivalya, absolute, pristine isolation. Isolation here does not mean loneliness. It means the pure consciousness is finally isolated from the intoxicating neurochemistry of the human brain. You no longer react blindly to adrenaline or dopamine. You can still participate fully in your daily life, your career, and your relationships, but you do so as a completely free, untouchable observer. You walk through the fire of the world without ever getting burned. The specific psychological weapon used to destroy this ignorance is unbroken discriminative discernment, known as Siksvaika Khyati. This is the relentless, second-by-second practice of separating the observer from the observed. In daily life, when intense frustration arises, you do not say, "I am frustrated." You internally declare, "My biological nervous system is currently experiencing frustration, but I am the silent, untouched witness." This continuous, razor-sharp cognitive separation eventually starves the ego to death, severing the roots of all emotional reactivity. As this fierce discernment matures, the yogi experiences a staggering, sevenfold cognitive shift in the final stages of wisdom. Vyas details these 7 monumental realizations, which culminate in the feeling, "I have known what is to be known, I have discarded what is to be discarded, and I have attained what is to be attained." the agonizing, lifelong psychological hunger of the ego entirely collapses. A panoramic, cosmic quietness descends upon the nervous system, and the human intellect naturally dissolves, having completely fulfilled its evolutionary duty. But how do we physically trigger this profound wisdom? By the dedicated practice of the limbs of yoga, which brutally destroy the mind's impurities until the light of wisdom shines forth. Patanjali declares that psychological impurities, trauma, and bad habits act as thick, suffocating layers of mud blocking the inner sun. Yoga is not about acquiring new, external knowledge. It is the relentless, mechanical friction of scraping away the toxic residue of the past. As the heavy mud of the ego is scrubbed away by daily discipline, the innate, blazing light of truth naturally and inevitably shines forth from within. To achieve this monumental purification, Patanjali formally introduces the legendary Ashtanga, the eight-limbed path of yoga. This is not a random collection of techniques, but a precise, biological and psychological ladder. It begins with external social ethics, moves to internal personal discipline, locks the physical body into stillness, regulates the entire nervous system through breath, forcibly withdraws the senses from the external world, binds the mind into extreme concentration, drops into profound meditation, and finally explodes into absolute, seedless absorption. The very first, non-negotiable step of this ladder is the yams, the foundational moral restraints of non-violence, absolute truthfulness, non-stealing, the conservation of vital energy, and non-possessiveness. Patanjali places external morality first for a fiercely practical reason. If you sit down to meditate while your daily life is built on lying, hoarding wealth, or harming others, your nervous system will be too violently agitated by subconscious guilt and defensiveness to ever achieve stillness. Spiritual growth is biologically impossible on a foundation of unethical behavior. The yams are the concrete bedrock upon which the entire skyscraper of enlightenment must be built. The foundational yams are declared in Sutra 2.31 as the Mahavratam, the great cosmic vow. Sage Vyas explicitly states these restraints, non-violence, truth, and non-stealing, are absolute. They cannot be bypassed or excused by your geographic location, your social class, or an emergency circumstance. In daily life, the human ego constantly rationalizes toxic behavior, claiming, I had to lie to protect my job, or I had to be violent because they attacked my ego first. Patanjali brutally severs these excuses. The yams are a universal, uncompromising psychological physics. Breaking them inevitably shatters the nervous system, making true stillness mathematically impossible. Moving inward, Sutra 2.32 introduces the niyamas, the 5 internal observances required for psychological hygiene. They are shaucha, absolute purity of body and mind, santusha, radical contentment, tapas, fiery discipline, swadhyaya, rigorous self-study, and ishvara pranidhana, total surrender to the highest reality. While the yams govern how you interact with the external world, the niyamas dictate the strict internal climate of your own biology. Contentment, for example, is not passive resignation. It is the fierce, active refusal to let your internal peace be hijacked by the lack of an external object. What happens when toxic, violent thoughts inevitably invade the mind? Sutra 2.33 provides the ultimate cognitive behavioral tool, Pratipaksha Bhavana. When oppressed by dark, unwholesome thoughts, one must actively cultivate the exact opposite wavelength. Hariharananda Aranya explains that you cannot kill a toxic thought by fighting it directly, fighting only feeds it energy. Instead, if overwhelming anger arises toward a coworker, you must aggressively force the mind to generate thoughts of profound compassion or structural emptiness. The introduction of the opposite, highly elevated frequency naturally cancels out the lower frequency of hatred, returning the mind to baseline zero. Sutra 2.34 scientifically dissects exactly why this cognitive replacement is necessary. Patanjali explains that dark thoughts, like violence or cruelty, are deeply rooted in greed, anger, or delusion. Crucially, this applies whether the violence is committed by you, caused by you, or simply approved of by you silently. Their mathematical outcome is always infinite ignorance and unending misery. If you silently cheer when an enemy is humiliated on the internet, your own nervous system absorbs the toxic, karmic poison of that violence. Recognizing this terrifying biological reality forces the yogi to instantly deploy Pratipaksha Bhavana to save their own mind. The text now details the superhuman, miraculous results of mastering each restraint, beginning with Sutra 2.35. When a yogi is absolutely, impeccably grounded in ahimsa, or non-violence, all hostility permanently ceases in their presence. This is not a metaphor. When the mind is utterly purged of the microscopic vibration of malice, the yogi radiates an intense, biological field of peace. Even a violent, predatory animal or an incredibly hostile human being walking into this energetic radius will inexplicably drop their weapons and experience a sudden, overwhelming pacification, overridden by the master's frequency. Sutra 2.36 reveals the staggering power of absolute truthfulness. When satya, truth, is perfectly established in the nervous system, the yogi's words become the physical law of reality. Usually, our actions dictate the fruits we receive. But for the master of truth, whatever they speak instantly manifests. Because their mind is completely cleansed of the friction of deception, their consciousness aligns perfectly with the creative engine of the universe. If they bless a sick person to be healed, reality reorganizes itself instantaneously to make that statement objectively true. Sutra 2.37 explains the result of non-stealing. When asteya is fully established, all wealth and precious jewels naturally present themselves to the yogi. Modern psychology recognizes that stealing is rooted in a deep, subconscious scarcity mindset, a belief that you inherently lack something. When you completely obliterate the vibration of lack from your cellular memory, you become a massive energetic vacuum of abundance. Without seeking money or status, the universe organically rushes to supply the yogi with absolute material and spiritual wealth, simply because they no longer desperately need it. Sutra 2.38 touches upon the conservation of vital energy. When Brahmacharya, or absolute sensory restraint, is firmly grounded, the yogi attains immense, limitless vigor. Vyas notes that the relentless pursuit of sexual, dietary, and sensory pleasure brutally exhausts the human nervous system. By consciously locking down these leaking sensory valves, the raw, biological energy is forced upwards, mutating into ojas, a radiant, unshakable spiritual horsepower that grants the practitioner superhuman stamina and a profoundly magnetic aura. Sutra 2.39 provides the reward for dropping greed when aparigraha, or total non-possessiveness, becomes steady. A sudden illumination arises regarding the how and why of one's entire existence. The human mind is usually completely blinded by the obsession with accumulating objects, properties, and identities. When you drop the heavy, suffocating baggage of needing to own reality, your mental bandwidth expands exponentially. The yogi suddenly remembers their past lives, their cosmic trajectory, and the exact, precise reason their immortal soul chose to incarnate in this specific biological body. We transition to the rewards of the niyamas in Sutra 2.40. From Shaucha, which is absolute physical and mental purity, arises a profound dispassion toward one's own physical body and a cessation of the desperate craving for physical contact with others. This sounds harsh, but it is ultimate liberation. Through intense cleansing and biological study, the yogi objectively realizes the body is merely a decaying, fleshy machine constantly producing impurities. This completely shatters the hypnotic, narcissistic obsession with bodily beauty, permanently destroying the ego's enslavement to the mirror and freeing the mind to focus purely on the immortal soul. Continuing the rewards of the niyamas, Patanjali reveals the psychological outcome of mental purity in Sutra 2.41. From the purification of the mind arises spontaneous cheerfulness, absolute one-pointedness, supreme control over the sensory organs, and the biological fitness required for self-realization. Sage Vyas explains that mental impurity is primarily the heavy, depressive fog of tamas and the frantic, anxious agitation of rajas. When you stop consuming toxic media, engaging in toxic gossip, and feeding the ego, you actively cleanse the mental bandwidth. The mind defaults to its natural, pristine state of sattva. In this state, a spontaneous, uncaused cheerfulness erupts from within. You do not need an external reason to be happy. Your baseline neurology simply radiates joy and crystalline focus. Sutra 2.42 describes the explosive result of santosha. From absolute contentment comes unexcelled, supreme happiness. Modern psychology refers to the hedonic treadmill, the exhausting illusion that buying the next car, achieving the next promotion, or getting more online followers will finally provide lasting peace. It never does. The ego simply moves the goalpost. Hariharananda Aranya states that santosha is not a passive, lazy resignation to mediocrity. It is a fierce, aggressive refusal to let your internal joy be held hostage by external variables. By entirely cutting the cord between happiness and acquisition, the yogi accesses an infinite, self-sustaining reservoir of joy. Sutra 2.43 addresses the biological necessity of friction. Through tapas, or fiery austerity, impurities are utterly destroyed, bringing absolute perfection and power to the body and the sensory organs. Biological systems decay without resistance. Tapas is the deliberate, calculated application of physical and mental friction, like fasting, intense physical discipline, or enduring cold. When you push the biological machine past its comfortable limits, you trigger profound cellular autophagy and neuroplasticity. The intense heat of this willpower incinerates the sluggish, stagnant impurities lodged in the nervous system, mutating a weak, distracted body into a diamond-hard instrument capable of handling massive spiritual voltage. Sutra 2.44 provides the reward for Swadhyaya. From rigorous self-study and the repetition of sacred mantras arises direct communion with your chosen deity or highest ideal. This is not mere academic reading. Swadhyaya is the relentless, daily reprogramming of your deep subconscious. When you saturate your mind with the thoughts, words, and frequencies of enlightened beings, you forcibly rewrite your neural pathways. Eventually, the frequency becomes so deeply embedded that the boundary between you and the ideal collapses. The divine intelligence you have been contemplating suddenly and vividly manifests as a living, breathing reality within your own consciousness. Sutra 2.45 delivers the final nirma's reward. From total surrender to Ishvara, the supreme reality, comes the absolute perfection of samadhi. The ego is the ultimate bottleneck. No matter how much tapas you perform, if your ego claims the credit, you remain trapped in the illusion of individuality. Ishvara Pranidhana is the act of dropping your armor. When you entirely surrender your personal will, your anxieties, and the fruits of all your actions to the cosmic intelligence, the massive, exhausting friction of the ego vanishes instantly. Without the ego's interference, consciousness effortlessly plummets into the Mariana Trench of deep samadhi. Having established the ethical and psychological bedrock, Patanjali moves to the third limb of yoga in Sutra 2.46, Sthira Sukham Asanam. The physical posture must be utterly steady and supremely comfortable. Asana is widely misunderstood in the modern world as competitive acrobatics or fitness gymnastics. Classical yoga views posture as pure biomechanical engineering. The human nervous system cannot dive into the profound depths of the subconscious if the physical body is twitching, cramping, or fighting gravity. Sthira means rock-solid stability, like a mountain. Sukham means sweetness or ease. The body must be locked into an architectural alignment so perfect that all physical effort ceases, allowing the mind to forget the body entirely. How is this flawless posture achieved? Sutra 2.47 answers, by completely relaxing all muscular effort and merging the mind's focus into the infinite void. You cannot force the body into stillness through sheer tension. Tension creates tremors. The secret to asana is the psychological surrender of the physical struggle. Once the initial alignment is found, you consciously instruct every muscle to let go. Simultaneously, you cast your mind's attention out into the vast, boundless expanse of the infinite sky or cosmic void. As the mind merges with the infinite, the heavy, localized sensation of the physical body simply evaporates. Sutra 2.48 reveals the superhuman biological consequence of this mastery. From that perfect posture, one is completely immunized against the assaults of the pairs of opposites. The pairs of opposites, or dvandvas, rule human existence: heat and cold, pleasure and pain, praise and devastating insult. Normally, a sudden change in temperature or a harsh word causes an immediate, violent contraction in the nervous system. But when the yogi's consciousness is profoundly anchored in the infinite through perfect asana, the biological machine is literally taken offline. A blizzard or a burning fire strikes the skin, but the signal entirely fails to disturb the sovereign peace of the mind. With the body neutralized, Sutra 2.49 unlocks the fourth limb. Once that steady posture is secured, pranayama follows, the deliberate regulation and cessation of the movements of inhalation and exhalation. Breath is the steering wheel of the autonomic nervous system. Vyas notes that the breath and the mind are inextricably tethered together like two birds tied by the same string. You cannot have a panicked mind with a slow, microscopically smooth breath. Pranayama is not just deep breathing, it is the aggressive, surgical hijacking of the biological respiratory mechanism. By seizing control of the breath, the yogi unilaterally forces the brainwaves to slow down, plunging the mind into a state of highly alert sedation. Sutra 2.50 maps the precise mechanics of this practice. It involves the external exhalation, the internal inhalation, and the suspended retention of breath. These are strictly measured by space, time, and number, gradually becoming incredibly prolonged and exquisitely subtle. This is the ancient algorithm for nervous system mastery. By carefully expanding the length of the exhale to stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system and holding the breath out to starve the brain of its frantic oxygen addiction, the physical breath becomes so incredibly subtle that a feather held beneath the yogi's nose would not move. At this microscopic level of respiration, the loud, chaotic static of the ego is effectively silenced. But there is a level beyond mechanical regulation. Sutra 2.51 introduces the ultimate respiratory state. The fourth type of pranayama transcends both the external and internal spheres of breath entirely. Hariharananda Aranya describes this as Kevala Kambhaka, absolute, spontaneous cessation. It is not forced. As the mind plunges into incredibly deep concentration, the biological need for oxygen miraculously drops to zero. The lungs simply stop moving on their own. The yogi steps completely outside the biological rhythm of time and survival, resting in an ocean of breathless, deathless suspension. The body sleeps, but the consciousness is ablaze with light. The result of this breathless suspension is given in Sutra 2.52. Through this practice, the thick, heavy veil covering the inner light of the true self is completely destroyed. Every human being possesses a blazing core of omniscient light, but it is heavily suffocated by the dark clouds of past trauma, biological urges, and scattered, frantic thoughts. Pranayama acts like a hurricane-force wind. It systematically blows away the dense, neurochemical fog of tamas and rajas. As the biological noise flatlines, the veil suddenly shatters, allowing the terrifyingly beautiful, infinite light of the soul to flood the entire nervous system. Furthermore, Sutra 2.53 states the practical consequence, and the mind becomes perfectly fit and absolutely ready for dharana, deep concentration. You cannot force a scattered, unpurified mind into concentration. It is like trying to hold water in a sieve. But once the breath has been paralyzed through pranayama and the nervous system is completely rebooted, the mind loses its frantic, migratory nature. It naturally coalesces into a dense, unmoving singularity. The practitioner is no longer fighting distractions. The mind is now a flawless, frictionless laser ready to penetrate the deepest mysteries of the universe. With the mind weaponized, Patanjali introduces the fifth limb in Sutra 2.54, Pratyahara. It is the absolute withdrawal of the senses from their external objects, as if the senses are imitating the inward turning nature of the mind itself. In modern daily life, our attention is aggressively harvested by the attention economy, notifications, advertisements, and sensory noise. Our sensory tentacles are constantly dragged outward. Pratyahara is the conscious amputation of these external feeds. Just as a turtle retracts its limbs into its shell at the sign of danger, the yogi actively withdraws their visual, auditory, and tactile awareness from the world, folding all that leaking sensory energy back into the silent core of the brain. Patanjali concludes Chapter 2, the Sadhanapada, with Sutra 2.55, delivering the ultimate outcome of sensory withdrawal. From that practice comes supreme, absolute mastery over the senses. When you successfully cut the feed, the senses no longer drag the mind into the gutter of addiction and reaction. The external world loses all power to trigger you. You have successfully hacked your own biology, transforming the body from a chaotic, demanding master into a totally obedient, silent servant. With the foundation built, the body silenced, the breath paralyzed, and the senses locked down, the yogi is finally ready to enter Chapter 3 and deploy the staggering, reality-bending power of the mind. This concludes the Sadhanapada.